Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought UES Dominion, watching the hegemony fleet approach through the Vega system. The crystalline ships moved with alien grace, their formations perfect despite the enormous distances between vessels. "All ships report ready for combat," announced Commander Paul Martinez from the communications station. "The alien squadrons are in position on our flanks, and the orbital defense platforms are fully charged." Jake nodded grimly. 300. Ships from a dozen different species faced an enemy force twice their size, but numbers weren't everything. The galaxy had learned that lesson when humanity first arrived with their kinetic weapons. "Range to target?" he asked. 1,000,000 kilometers and closing, reported Captain Steve Adams from the sensor station. "The hegemony ships are maintaining formation, but not responding to any communication attempts." Through the main viewer, Jake could see the lead hegemony vessels beginning to glow with internal energy. Whatever weapons they carried were powering up for the first exchange of fire. "Admiral," called out Dr. Elena Vasquez from her science station, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout their fleet. Whatever they're preparing to fire, it's drawing power from their entire formation." Jake felt a chill of concern. Energy weapons that required the combined power of hundreds of ships suggested firepower beyond anything they had encountered. "All ships, prepare for enemy contact," he announced over the fleet communication system. "Remember, our weapons worked against the Korthak because they had never seen kinetic projectiles. These hegemony forces may have the same blind spot, the DI. First hegemony ship opened fire when the range closed to 500,000 kilometers. A beam of pure energy lanced across space, striking the Zephyrian cruiser Vengeance directly amidships. The alien vessel simply vanished, leaving no debris or energy signature behind. "My God," whispered Captain Adams. "They just erased an entire ship." More hegemony vessels began firing, their matter disintegration beams reaching across space to touch human and alien ships. Each contact resulted in the complete destruction of the target, as if the ships had never existed at all. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Jake ordered. "Do not let those beams touch you." The Galactic fleet scattered, using their superior maneuverability to avoid the deadly energy weapons. But the hegemony ships adjusted their aim with mechanical precision, tracking targets with accuracy that seemed impossible at such range. "Admiral," reported Admiral Veltar from his command ship, "we've lost 7 vessels in the first exchange. Their targeting systems are incredibly advanced." Jake gritted his teeth. They were losing ships faster than he had ever seen, and they hadn't even reached effective weapons range yet. "All ships close to kinetic weapons range," he ordered. "We can't fight them at long distance." The human dreadnoughts surged forward, their massive hulls bristling with railgun batteries and missile tubes. The alien vessels followed, adding their energy weapons to the mix despite their proven ineffectiveness. "Range, 300,000 kilometers, Captain Adams reported. "We're now within effective range of our primary weapons." "All ships, open fire," Jake commanded. The Galactic fleet unleashed everything they had. Hundreds of railgun slugs streaked through space at incredible velocity, while clouds of missiles followed behind. Energy beams from alien ships added brilliant colors to the display, though Jake doubted they would have much effect. The kinetic projectiles struck the lead hegemony ships with tremendous force. The crystalline hulls absorbed the impacts better than expected, but they weren't invulnerable. Cracks appeared in the alien armor, and several smaller vessels shattered completely under the bombardment. "We're getting through," reported Captain Adams with excitement. "The crystalline hulls can be damaged by kinetic weapons." But the hegemony forces adapted quickly. The damaged ships moved to the rear of their formation, while fresh vessels took their place. Worse, they began targeting the incoming projectiles with point defense weapons, destroying many of the railgun slugs and missiles before they could reach their targets. "Admiral," Dr. Vasquez called out urgently, "the hegemony ships are learning our attack patterns. They're adjusting their defenses in real time." Jake watched in dismay as more and more of their projectiles were intercepted. The enemy's adaptive technology was neutralizing their kinetic advantage faster than he had thought possible. "Sir," Commander Martinez reported, "we're receiving a priority message from Captain Wong aboard the Vengeance. She's requesting permission to engage with special weapons." Jake hesitated. The quantum torpedoes were their ultimate weapon, but they were also completely untested in actual combat. Using them now might be premature. Another matter disintegration beam swept across the formation, erasing the Etherian battleship Wisdom. The loss of the elegant alien vessel decided him. "Tell Captain Wong she is authorized to engage," he ordered. From her position at the edge of the battle, Captain Lisa Wong watched the main engagement with growing concern. The conventional weapons that had made humanity famous throughout the galaxy were proving insufficient against hegemony technology. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Commander Mike Torres, "Admiral Morrison has authorized us to use the quantum weapons." Lisa took a deep breath. Everything they had learned about warfare was about to change again. "Target the largest hegemony ship," she ordered. "Lock Quantum Torpedo 1 and prepare to fire." The targeting computer struggled to get a solid lock on the massive crystalline vessel. Its hull seemed to bend light and energy in ways that confused their sensors. "Target locked," Torres announced. "Quantum torpedo ready for launch." "Fire," Lisa commanded. The quantum torpedo streaked away from the Vengeance, its containment field barely visible against the backdrop of space. Unlike the brilliant trails left by conventional missiles, the quantum weapon was almost invisible as it approached its target. The torpedo struck the hegemony ship's hull and detonated. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality itself began to unravel around the impact point. The crystalline hull didn't explode or melt. It simply stopped existing. The quantum field spread outward from the impact site, unmaking matter at the molecular level. In seconds, a ship over 50 kilometers long had been reduced to empty space. The effect was so shocking that both fleets paused their firing for a moment. "Direct hit," Torres reported in an awed whisper. "The target has been completely destroyed." But the quantum field didn't stop. It continued expanding, though at a much slower rate. Lisa watched in horror as the field began affecting nearby, space itself, causing stars to flicker and distort. "Dr. Stone," she called to the physicist monitoring the weapons, "is that supposed to happen?" "No," Dr. Stone replied, his face pale with fear. "The quantum field should have collapsed after the initial detonation. Something's gone wrong, expanding quantum distortion finally stabilized, leaving a sphere of twisted space-time where the hegemony ship had been. Nothing could exist in that region. It had been cut off from normal reality entirely. "Captain," Torres reported, "the hegemony fleet is retreating. They're pulling back from our position." Lisa looked at the tactical display in amazement. The alien invaders, who had seemed unstoppable just minutes before, were withdrawing in apparent fear of the quantum weapons. Admiral Morrison's voice came over the communication system. "All ships, do not pursue. We need to assess what just happened before we use those weapons again." Lisa stared at the sphere of distorted space where the hegemony ship had been. Humanity had once again changed the nature of warfare, but this time they had created something that scared even them. "Torres," she said quietly, "prepare a full report on the quantum weapon effects. We need to understand what we've unleashed before we use it again." The Battle of Vega was over, but Lisa suspected the real war was just beginning. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the stars stretch into long lines as his ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The view never got old, even after 6 months of exploring the outer rim of the galaxy. Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations, monitoring the ship's systems and scanning for any signs of alien life. "Captain, we're picking up multiple contacts on long-range sensors," reported Lieutenant Amy Collins from the weapons station. Her voice was calm but alert. "Looks like a fleet of some kind." about 12 ships in formation. Jake felt his heart rate increase slightly. This was what they had been hoping for and dreading in equal measure. The Liberty was humanity's first deep space exploration vessel equipped with the latest technology Earth could provide. They had been searching for intelligent alien life for months, and now it seemed they had found it. "How far out are they?" Jake asked, moving to stand behind the sensor station where Chief Petty Officer Mike Torres was working. "About 2 million. Kilometers and closing," Mike replied. "They're moving in a perfect formation, definitely artificial. These aren't natural objects." Dr. Lisa Grant, the ship's xenobiologist, looked up from her research station with excitement in her eyes. "Captain, this could be our first contact with an alien civilization. We need to be very careful about how we approach this." Jake nodded. He had trained for this moment his entire career, but now that it was here, he felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. How humanity handled first contact could determine the future of both species. "Lieutenant Collins, what's our weapons status?" he asked. "All systems are green, Captain. Railgun batteries are charged and ready, missile tubes are loaded with standard kinetic warheads, and our point defense systems are online." The alien ships were getting closer now, and the details were becoming clearer on the main screen. They were sleek vessels with smooth curves and what appeared to be energy weapon arrays along their hulls. They moved with purpose and precision that spoke of advanced technology and military discipline. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," reported the communications officer. "It's not in any language our computers recognize, but the universal translator is working on it." A few moments later, a voice filled the bridge. It was harsh and commanding, with an undertone that suggested the speaker was used to being obeyed without question. "Unknown vessel, you have entered Zephyrian space without permission. Identify yourself immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with destruction." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. This was not the peaceful first contact he had hoped for. The alien voice continued speaking, and the translation became clearer as the computer learned the language. "Patterns. This is Fleet Commander Vexhai of the Zephyrian Confederacy. Your primitive vessel is no match for our fleet. Surrender now and you may be allowed to live as slaves. Refuse, and we will turn your ship into space debris." Dr. Grant looked shocked. "Captain, they're being extremely hostile. This isn't how first contact is supposed to go." Jake gritted his teeth. He had hoped to meet the aliens as friends, but it was clear that these Zephyrians saw humanity as nothing more than potential slaves. He would not let his crew be taken without a fight. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Channel open, Captain. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Liberty. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations with your people. We have no hostile intentions and request safe passage through this region of space." There was a pause. Then the alien voice returned, filled with what sounded like amusement. "Humans? We have never heard of your species. You speak of peace while carrying weapons. Your ship may be small, but our sensors detect significant armaments. No peaceful vessel needs such firepower." Lieutenant Collins looked at Jake with confusion. "Captain, our weapons are just standard defensive systems, nothing compared to what a real warship would carry." Jake understood. To the humans, the Liberty was lightly armed for exploration. But to aliens who might have different ideas about warfare, their weapons might seem threatening. "Fleet Commander, our weapons are for defense only. We have no wish to fight you, but we will not surrender our freedom." "Defense?" The alien voice carried clear mockery now. "Your weapons are primitive kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives. Our energy shields will deflect them like rain. You are no threat to us." On the screen, Jake could see the alien ships moving into an attack formation. Their weapon arrays were beginning to glow with energy. "Captain," Mike Torres called out urgently. "Their lead ship is charging what looks like plasma cannons. They're targeting our engines." Jake made his decision. "All hands, battle stations. Lieutenant Collins, prepare to return fire if they attack. Aye, Captain. Railgun batteries targeted on their flagship. The alien voice came over the comm one last time. Since you refuse to surrender, we will demonstrate our superiority. Prepare to watch your engines be destroyed. A brilliant beam of blue energy lanced out from the lead alien ship, striking the Liberty's rear shields. The ship shook under the impact, but the shields held. Shields down to 60%, reported Mike. Their plasma weapons are more powerful than expected. That was a warning shot, came the alien voice. The next one will cripple your ship. Surrender now or face destruction. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. They were scared but determined. These aliens thought they could bully humanity into submission just because their ship was small. They were about to learn that humans had a very different approach to warfare. Lieutenant Collins, return fire. Target their flagship with a full railgun salvo. Aye, Captain. Firing now. The Liberty's main railgun battery consisted of 6 magnetic accelerators that could launch tungsten slugs at a significant fraction of light speed. The aliens had never encountered kinetic weapons with such velocity and mass. 3 tungsten projectiles, each weighing several tons and moving at incredible speed, struck the Zephyrian flagship in less than 2 seconds. The alien ship's energy shields, designed to deflect plasma and laser weapons, offered no protection against solid matter moving at such velocity. The first slug punched through the ship's hull like it was made of paper. The second and third followed microseconds later, and the massive kinetic energy transferred into the ship's structure in an instant. The entire vessel simply disappeared in a brilliant explosion as its power systems overloaded and its hull disintegrated. The bridge of the Liberty fell silent as they watched the debris field expand where the alien flagship had been just moments before. "My God," whispered Dr. Grant. "We just destroyed an entire ship with one salvo." The remaining alien vessels seemed frozen in shock. Then, one by one, they began to retreat at maximum speed. "Captain," Amy Collins said quietly, "I think we just changed everything." Admiral Kate Sullivan stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the landing platform of Nexus Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Council. The massive spaceport stretched out before her, filled with ships from dozens of different alien species. She had never seen anything like it in her 30 years of military service. Beside her, Ambassador Paul Martinez adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform and checked his translator device one more time. Colonel Ben Harper, her military advisor, kept his hand near his sidearm out of habit, though they had been assured that weapons were not needed on Nexus Prime. "Remember, Admiral," Paul said quietly as they walked toward the council building, "we're here to establish peaceful relations. The reports from Captain Morrison's encounter have already reached them, and they're very concerned about our weapons capabilities." Kate nodded but said nothing. She had read every detail of the Liberty's first contact with the Zephyrians. 3 tungsten slugs had completely destroyed an alien warship that should have been superior to anything humanity could build. The implications were staggering. The council building rose above them like a crystal mountain, its transparent walls showing the meeting chambers inside. Alien beings of all shapes and sizes moved through the corridors, conducting the business of galactic civilization. Their escort was a tall, thin creature with pale blue skin and large eyes. It introduced itself as Diplomatic Aide Zentari of the Etherian race. "The Council is most eager to meet with your delegation," it said in perfect English. "Though I must warn you, there is considerable concern about your species' military capabilities." As they entered the main council chamber, Kate felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon her. The chamber was enormous, with tiered seating arranged in a circle around a central platform. Representatives from 12 different species sat in their designated areas, each group distinctly different from the others. At the center of the chamber stood Chancellor Morden, an Etherian like their escort, but clearly much older and more important. His robes sparkled with embedded technology, and his large eyes seemed to see everything at once. "Admiral Sullivan of the human species," Chancellor Morden announced, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "You and your delegation are welcome to Nexus Prime. Please take your place at the center so that all may hear your words." Kate walked to the central platform with Paul and Ben following close behind. The chamber fell silent as she looked around at the assembled alien representatives. "Honored council members," she began. "I am Admiral Kate Sullivan of the United Earth Defense Force. We come here seeking peaceful relations and hoping to join the galactic community as friends and allies." A harsh voice interrupted her from one of the upper tiers. "Friends do not destroy entire warships with single attacks," said a reptilian creature with scales that shifted color as it spoke. "I am War Leader Krexnor of the Drakmari Empire. Our sensors have analyzed the debris from Fleet Commander Vexhi's ship. The damage patterns are unlike anything we have ever seen." Another voice joined in, this one from a crystalline being that seemed to be made of living rock. "The Zephyrians have been a military power in this sector for over 2,000 years. Their ships are equipped with the finest energy shields available. How did your primitive kinetic weapons penetrate them so easily?" Kate exchanged a glance with Colonel Harper before answering. "Honored representatives, our weapons may seem primitive to you, but they operate on different principles than energy-based systems. We use kinetic force rather than directed energy." Chancellor Morden raised one long-fingered hand for silence. "Admiral Sullivan, our scientists have studied the tactical recordings from the encounter. Your ship fired projectiles made of dense metal at velocities that should be impossible for a vessel of that size. How do you accelerate such mass to such speeds?" "Magnetic acceleration," Ben Harper answered when Kate nodded to him. "We call them railguns. They use powerful magnetic fields to launch projectiles at extremely high velocities." A murmur ran through the chamber as the aliens processed this information. Several of them were speaking rapidly in their own languages to their advisors. "But the energy requirements," protested a floating creature that looked like a jellyfish, made of light. "To generate magnetic fields powerful enough for such acceleration would require massive power systems. We've developed compact fusion reactors specifically for military use," Kate replied. "Each of our warships carries enough power to supply a small city." The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Chancellor Morden had to call for order several times before the noise died down. "Admiral," he said carefully, "are you telling us that your species has weaponized nuclear fusion for use on individual spacecraft?" "Not just fusion," Paul Martinez said, deciding it was time for full disclosure. "We also have weapons that use nuclear fission and fusion reactions directly as warheads." The silence that followed was absolute. Kate could see alien faces displaying what she assumed were expressions of shock and disbelief. War Leader Krexnor was the first to speak. "You carry nuclear weapons on your ships? Weapons that split atoms themselves?" "Our ship carried conventional kinetic warheads in the encounter." "With the Zephyrians," Kate explained. "But yes, our military doctrine includes nuclear weapons for certain situations." A new voice spoke from the chamber's highest tier. It belonged to a creature that looked almost like a giant butterfly with metallic wings. "I am Hive Mother Silthara of the Nexari Collective. Our species has existed for 50,000 years. In all that time, we have never encountered a race that weaponized the fundamental forces of matter itself." Chancellor Morden stepped closer to the platform. "Admiral Sullivan, the Galactic Council has maintained peace for millennia through carefully balanced military forces. Energy weapons have predictable effects and limited range. What you describe sounds like weapons of mass destruction." Kate felt the mood in the chamber shifting from curiosity to fear. "Chancellor, I assure you that we have no intention of using such weapons against peaceful species. Our nuclear doctrine is strictly defensive." "Defensive?" War Leader Krexnor stood up, his scales turning a deep red color. "You could sterilize entire worlds with such weapons." "As could any species with sufficient technology," Ben Harper replied calmly. "The difference is that we've learned to control these forces rather than fear them." Chancellor Morden raised his hand again. "Admiral Sullivan, the Council has discussed your species' application for membership since we received the reports from the Zephyrian encounter. We are prepared to offer humanity a place in the galactic community, but there must be conditions." Kate stiffened. "What kind of conditions?" "First, you must submit all nuclear weapons to Council oversight. Second, your kinetic weapon systems must be limited to approved power levels. Third, all human military vessels must carry Council observers to ensure compliance with galactic warfare conventions." The chamber fell silent as everyone waited for Kate's response. She looked around at the alien faces, seeing fear and suspicion where she had hoped to find friendship. "With respect, Chancellor," she said finally, "those conditions are not acceptable." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Several alien representatives began speaking at once. "You refuse the Council's generous offer?" Chancellor Morden asked in disbelief. "We refuse to disarm ourselves based on fear and misunderstanding," Kate replied firmly. "Our weapons are tools, just like yours. The difference is that we've developed different tools based on our understanding of physics." Colonel Harper stepped forward and activated a small holographic projector. Images began playing in the air above the platform, showing human military exercises on Earth. The aliens watched in stunned silence as artillery barrages lit up practice ranges, missiles struck targets with pinpoint accuracy, and finally, a controlled nuclear test demonstrated the true power of human weapons. When the images ended, the chamber remained silent for a long moment. "These are your normal military exercises?" asked Hive Mother Silthera in a whisper. "Standard training," Kate confirmed. "Every human soldier learns to use these weapons safely and effectively." Chancellor Morden looked older than his years as he processed what he had seen. "Admiral Sullivan, your species has developed along a very different path than any other race in the galaxy. We need time to consider what this means." Kate nodded. "We understand, Chancellor, but we will not accept restrictions that would leave us defenseless. Humanity has learned that peace is best maintained through strength, not weakness." As they left the council chamber, Ambassador Martinez whispered to Kate, "I think we just scared them more than the Zephyrians did." Kate watched the alien representatives through the transparent walls as they gathered in urgent discussion groups. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing, Paul. Sometimes fear leads to respect." Fleet Admiral Tony Richards stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense station, watching the emergency broadcast from the Galactic Council with growing alarm. The massive holographic display showed Chancellor Morden's pale face as he delivered the devastating news. "The outer rim worlds of Kepler 7, Zarion 7, and Valdris Prime have gone silent," the Chancellor announced. "Long-range probes have confirmed our worst fears. The Korthak swarm has returned from dark space, and they are consuming everything in their path." Tony turned to his aide, Commander Lisa Wong, who was reviewing tactical data on her tablet. "How bad is it, Lisa?" "Very bad, sir," she replied grimly. "The Council's own fleets tried to engage the Korthak at Valdris Prime. They lost 47 ships and didn't destroy a single enemy vessel. Their energy weapons are completely ineffective against Korthak bioarmor." The broadcast continued as Chancellor Morden showed reconnaissance footage of the alien invaders. The Korthak ships looked like massive insects made of black chitinous material. They moved in perfect swarms, their organic hulls pulsing with life as they stripped planets, bare of all resources. "My God," whispered Captain Steve Adams from his position at the communications station. "Those things are enormous. Some of them must be 20 kilometers long." Tony studied the images carefully. The Korthak bioships were unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. They had no visible weapons ports or engine systems. Instead, they seemed to absorb energy attacks and use them to fuel their own growth. "Sir," called out Dr. Elena Vasquez from the science station, "I'm reading the Council's tactical analysis of Korthak defenses. Their bio-armor can absorb and redirect energy-based attacks. Plasma cannons, laser arrays, particle beams, nothing gets through." "What about kinetic weapons?" Tony asked. "The report doesn't mention any testing with kinetic weapons, sir. Apparently no Council species uses them extensively." Tony felt a cold smile cross his face. The Galactic Council had tried to limit human weapons just weeks ago, claiming they were too dangerous for civilized warfare. Now they faced an enemy that their civilized weapons couldn't touch. The emergency communication system activated, and Chancellor Morden appeared on the screen in real time. His usual composure was gone, replaced by obvious desperation. "Admiral Richards," he said without preamble, "the Council formally requests immediate military assistance from the human fleet. Our conventional forces are no match for the Korthak bioships." "Chancellor," Tony replied calmly, "just last month your Council demanded that we limit our weapons and accept your observers on our ships. You called our military doctrine primitive and dangerous." Morden's face flushed with embarrassment. "Admiral, I understand your reluctance, but billions of lives are at stake. The Korthak are not just conquering worlds, they're consuming them completely. Every planet they take is stripped down to bedrock." Tony looked around his command center at his officers. Captain Lisa Wong commanded the destroyer UES Vengeance. Captain Steve Adams led the UES Thunder. Both ships were armed with the latest human kinetic weapons and nuclear warheads. "Chancellor, if we agree to help, we do it our way. No restrictions on our weapons, no Council observers, and no interference with our tactics." "Agreed," Morden said immediately. "Completely agreed. Whatever you need. Then we'll need complete tactical data on Korthak capabilities and movement patterns." Within hours, human ships were moving toward the Kepler system, where the largest Korthak swarm was consuming the industrial world of Zerion 7. Tony led the fleet aboard his flagship, the heavy cruiser UES Dominion, while Lisa Wong and Steve Adams commanded their destroyers in supporting positions. "Admiral," reported the sensor officer as they approached the system, "we're detecting over 200 Korthak bioships in orbit around Zerion 7. They've already stripped away most of the planet's atmosphere." Through the main viewer, Tony could see the nightmarish scene. The Korthak ships moved like a swarm of locusts, their organic hulls pulsing as they fed on the planet below. Massive feeding tubes extended from the ships to the surface, sucking up everything they touched. "Sir," called Captain Wong from the Vengeance, "Council fleet remnants are retreating from the system. They're requesting permission to join our formation." "Granted," Tony replied. "All ships, prepare for combat. Target the largest bioships first." The Korthak detected the approaching human fleet and began moving to intercept. Their bioships flowed through space like living creatures, showing no formation or tactical structure that human military doctrine could recognize. "Admiral," Dr. Vasquez reported from her science station, "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the lead Korthak ships. They're charging some kind of bioplasma weapon." "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Tony ordered. "Prepare to return fire." The Korthak opened fire first, launching streams of corrosive bioplasma that ate through space, like living acid. The human ships dodged and weaved, their advanced maneuvering systems keeping them ahead of the deadly streams. "Captain Adams," Tony called out, "target the lead bioship with a full missile barrage." "Aye, sir. Firing 24 high explosive missiles." The Thunder launched its entire missile payload in a coordinated strike. The missiles screamed through space toward the largest Korthak bioship, their warheads armed with the most powerful conventional explosives humanity had developed. The bioship tried to absorb the incoming weapons like it had done with energy attacks, but kinetic explosives worked very differently. The missiles punched through the creature's bio-armor and detonated inside its body cavity. The explosion was spectacular. The bioship, over 15 kilometers long, simply came apart in a chain of secondary detonations as its internal organs ruptured, chunks of organic matter scattered in all directions. "Direct hit," Captain Adams reported with excitement. "The target is completely destroyed." The other Korthak ships seemed to pause in confusion. They had never encountered weapons that could penetrate their bio-armor so easily. "Captain Wong," Tony ordered, "target the next largest ship with railgun." "Fire." "Targeting now, sir. Firing full railgun battery." The Vengeance's 6 railguns fired in sequence, launching tungsten slugs at incredible velocity. The Korthak bioship tried to dodge, but the projectiles moved too fast. Each slug punched completely through the creature's body, leaving massive exit wounds that leaked biofluid into space. "Another kill confirmed," Wong reported. "The kinetic penetration is devastating their bio-armor." Tony watched as more Korthak ships began swarming toward the human fleet. "All ships, open fire with everything we have. Show them what human firepower really means." The human fleet unleashed hell on the Korthak swarm. Railguns fired continuously, punching holes through bio-armor that had stopped every energy weapon the galaxy could produce. High explosive missiles detonated inside bioships, tearing them apart from within. Even the fleet's point defense guns proved deadly against the organic hulls. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Council fleet. Admiral Veltar of the Zephyrians wants to speak with you." "Put him through." The screen showed a reptilian face that Tony recognized from intelligence briefings. Admiral Veltar had been one of the Zephyrian commanders who survived the Liberty's first encounter with humanity. "Admiral Richards," Veltar said, his voice filled with awe. "Your weapons are cutting through the Korthak like they're made of." "Paper! How is this possible?" "Simple physics, Admiral," Tony replied as another bioship exploded in the background. "Kinetic energy doesn't care how tough your armor is. Enough mass moving fast enough will punch through anything." The battle continued for 3 hours. By the end, over 100 Korthak bioships had been destroyed, and the remainder were retreating toward dark space. Not a single human ship had been lost. "Admiral," Dr. Vasquez reported, "the surviving bioships are broadcasting some kind of distress signal. I think they're calling for reinforcements." Tony nodded grimly. This had been just the first encounter. The main Korthak force was still out there somewhere in dark space, and now they knew that their bio-armor wasn't invincible. "All ships, return to base," he ordered. "We need to prepare for a much larger fight." As the human fleet withdrew from the Kepler system, Tony looked at the tactical display showing the destroyed Korthak bioships. For the first time in galactic history, the seemingly invincible swarm had been defeated. "Sir," Captain Wong called, "from the Vengeance. The Council ships are requesting permission to study our weapons." Tony smiled. A few weeks ago, those same Council members had wanted to ban human weapons as too dangerous. Now they were begging to learn how they worked. "Tell them we'll be happy to share our knowledge," he replied. "It looks like the galaxy is finally ready to learn about real firepower." President Maria Rodriguez stood at the podium in the newly rebuilt council chambers on Nexus Prime, looking out at the assembled representatives from across the galaxy. The chamber looked much the same as it had 2 years ago, but everything else had changed completely. Where once there had been 12 species in the Galactic Council, now there were 15, with humanity holding a permanent seat as a founding member of the new Galactic Defense Alliance. The old system of carefully balanced energy weapons and limited conflicts had given way to human concepts of deterrence through overwhelming firepower. "Distinguished representatives," President Rodriguez began, "we gather today to celebrate not just the defeat of the Korthak swarm, but the birth of a new era of galactic security." In the front row, Admiral Jake Morrison sat with the other military leaders who had become heroes during the war. His promotion from captain to admiral reflected humanity's new status in galactic affairs. Beside him sat Admiral Kate Sullivan, now Secretary of Galactic Defense, and General Alex Carter, who had been elected as the first human supreme military. Commander Chancellor Morden, looking older but more confident than he had during the dark days of the Korthak invasion, stood to address the assembly. 2 years ago, we feared that humanity's weapons were too dangerous for civilized space, he admitted. Today we understand that it was our own limited thinking that was dangerous. The Korthak would have destroyed us all if not for human military doctrine. The Etherian leader gestured toward a massive holographic display that showed the current state of galactic defenses. Human-designed kinetic weapons platforms orbited every major world, while hybrid ships combining human firepower with alien technology patrolled the outer rim. The galaxy is more secure today than it has been in thousands of years, Morden continued. Not because we have achieved perfect peace, but because we have achieved perfect deterrence. Admiral Morrison smiled as he remembered the early days of the war, when alien officers had watched in amazement as human weapons tore through supposedly invincible bioarmor. Now, those same aliens were graduating from the Galactic Military Academy on Luna, where they learned to think like human tacticians. Colonel Amy Collins, the former weapons officer from the Liberty, who now served as Dean of Tactical Studies at the Academy, had revolutionized galactic military thinking. Her courses on applied kinetic theory and tactical nuclear doctrine were required for all alien military officers. Colonel Collins, President Rodriguez announced, "Would you please present this year's graduation statistics?" Amy stood and activated her data display. This year, we graduated 847 alien officers from 23 different species. They returned to their home fleets with a complete understanding of kinetic warfare principles and hybrid weapon systems. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Alien species that had fought with elegant energy weapons for millennia were now building massive railgun batteries and learning to appreciate the simple effectiveness of high-explosive warheads. Admiral Veltar of the Zephyrians, now serving as Deputy Supreme Commander, had become one of humanity's closest allies. His species had embraced kinetic weapons with enthusiasm, combining their natural aggression with human firepower concepts. The Zephyrian Third Fleet has completed construction of 12 new hybrid dreadnoughts, Veltar reported. Each ship combines human kinetic weapons with our improved targeting systems and Etherian shield technology. General Carter nodded approvingly. The hybrid ships represented the best of both human and alien engineering. They were faster and more accurate than pure human designs, but they carried the devastating firepower that had made humanity famous throughout the galaxy. "What about the Outer Rim Patrol reports?" President Rodriguez asked. Commander Sarah Johnson, now Admiral Johnson and head of Outer Rim Command, stood to deliver her report. "All sectors remain secure, Madam President. The new early warning system has detected 3 potential threats in the past year, all of which were eliminated before they could establish a foothold in our space. The early warning system was another human innovation that had transformed galactic defense. Instead of waiting for threats to announce themselves, humanity had established monitoring stations throughout dark space, equipped with long-range sensors and automated defense platforms. Any signs of Korthak survivors?" asked scientist Prime Zephanos, who now headed the Xenobiology Research Division. "None," Dr. Elena Vasquez replied from her position as Director of Threat Assessment. "Our deep space probes have found no trace of Korthak biosignatures in any of the surveyed regions. The destruction of the Queen ship appears to have eliminated their species entirely." President Rodriguez felt a moment of sadness at that news. Humanity had never intended to commit genocide, but the Korthak had left them no choice. Their hive-minded nature meant they could never coexist peacefully with other species. "The important thing," she said aloud, "is that we've learned from this experience. The galaxy now has the tools and knowledge to deal with any similar threat." Fleet Admiral Danny Miller, the hero of the Queen ship assault, stood to address the assembly. His ship, the Liberator, had been refitted as the flagship of the new Rapid Response Fleet, capable of reaching any point in the galaxy within days. The Rapid Response Fleet now consists of 47 ships from 8 different species, he reported. All crews have been trained in combined arms tactics and are equipped with the latest hybrid weapon systems. The concept of a rapid response force had been purely human, but it had been enthusiastically adopted by the other species. The idea that military force could be projected quickly across vast distances was revolutionary to aliens who had thought in terms of local defense for millennia. Admiral Morrison, President Rodriguez called out, "Would you please share the latest intelligence summary?" Jake stood and activated the main display, showing a map of known space with threat assessments marked in different colors. "Current intelligence indicates no major threats to galactic security," he reported. "However, we have identified several minor aggressive species in unexplored regions that may require intervention in the future." The difference in approach was striking. 2 years ago, the Galactic Council would have waited for these species to become actual threats. Now, under human influence, they were prepared to deal with problems before they grew out of control. "Any species showing Korthak-like characteristics?" asked War Leader Krexnor of the Drakmari, who had become one of humanity's most enthusiastic students. "None so far," Jake replied, "but we remain vigilant. The monitoring stations are equipped to detect hive mind communication patterns and bioship signatures." President Rodriguez looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. Humans now served in leadership positions throughout the galactic military structure, but they had also learned from their alien allies. The combination of human aggression with alien wisdom had created something greater than either could achieve alone. "Before we conclude today's session," she announced, "I want to address the newest members of our alliance. 3 new species had petitioned to join the Galactic Defense Alliance in the past year, drawn by the promise of security and the impressive military capabilities they had witnessed. The Corvani Republic, the Stellar Commonwealth, and the free worlds of Arcturus have all completed their integration training and are now full members of our alliance," President Rodriguez announced to applause. Each new member species brought unique capabilities to the alliance, but they also adopted human military doctrine as their standard. The galaxy was becoming more unified and more deadly with each passing year. As the session concluded, President Rodriguez reflected on how much had changed since that first encounter between the Liberty and the Zephyrian fleet. Humanity had gone from being unknown primitives to the dominant military power in the galaxy, not through conquest, but through simple effectiveness. Admiral Morrison approached as the chamber emptied. "Any regrets about how things have turned out?" he asked. Maria smiled. "None at all, Jake. We came to the stars looking for friends and found a galaxy that needed protecting. I think we've done a pretty good job." Through the transparent walls of the chamber, they could see the Luna-based shipyards where the next generation of hybrid warships was under construction. Sleek vessels that combined human firepower with alien technology, ready to defend the galaxy against any threat that might emerge from the dark spaces between the stars. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the best way to preserve peace was to be prepared for war. And thanks to humanity's unique approach to warfare, the galaxy was now very well prepared indeed. Fleet Admiral Danny Miller stood on the observation deck of the massive orbital station above Earth, watching the construction of humanity's largest warship ever built. The UES Titan stretched nearly 30 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull bristling with railgun batteries and missile tubes that could level entire fleets. 5 years had passed since the defeat of the Korthak swarm, and the galaxy had enjoyed unprecedented peace. But recent intelligence reports suggested that peace might be coming to an end. "Admiral," called Captain Ryan Bell as he approached with a data tablet in hand, "the deep space monitoring stations are picking up something unusual from the Andromeda sector." Danny turned from the viewport to examine the readings. The data showed massive energy signatures moving through dark space, heading directly toward their galaxy at incredible speed. "How big are we talking about?" Danny asked. "The energy output suggests ships larger than anything we've ever encountered," Ryan replied grimly. Whatever's coming, it makes the Korthak Queen ship look like a fighter craft. Dr. Elena Vasquez hurried onto the observation deck, her face pale with concern. As the director of xenobiological threats, she had been analyzing the incoming data for hours. "Admiral Miller," she said breathlessly, "I think we're looking at an invasion force from outside our galaxy entirely. The energy patterns don't match any known species." Danny felt a familiar chill run down his spine. Just when the galaxy had finally achieved stability, a new threat was emerging from the void between galaxies. "Time until arrival?" he asked. 6 months, maybe less," Dr. Vasquez replied. "And Admiral, there's something else. The energy signatures suggest these ships are using some kind of space-folding technology. They're covering distances that should take years in a matter of weeks." The implications were staggering. An alien force with technology far beyond anything in their galaxy was heading straight for them, and they had no idea what these invaders wanted or how to stop them. "Get me President Rodriguez and Admiral Morrison immediately," Danny ordered. "We need to convene an emergency session of the Galactic Defense Council." Within hours, leaders from across the galaxy had gathered in the Emergency Command Center on Nexus Prime. The massive holographic display showed the approaching threat as a collection of red dots moving inexorably toward their position. President Maria Rodriguez looked around the room at the assembled military leaders and alien representatives. Admiral Jake Morrison sat with General Alex Carter and Admiral Kate Sullivan, while alien allies like Admiral Veltar and Chancellor Morden reviewed the threat assessment data. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored allies," President Rodriguez began, "we face a challenge unlike anything we've encountered before. These invaders possess technology that appears to be centuries ahead of our own." Admiral Morrison activated the tactical display, showing detailed scans of the approaching ships. The vessels were enormous, some over 100 kilometers long, and their hulls seemed to be made of some kind of crystalline material that diffracted sensor beams. "We've designated them the Hegemony Fleet based on their formation patterns," Morrison explained. "Initial analysis suggests they're not biological like the Korthak, but they're definitely artificial constructs of some kind." Chancellor Morden leaned forward in his chair. "Admiral, our most powerful weapons were effective against the Korthak. Because their bio-armor couldn't handle kinetic weapons, do we have any reason to believe our weapons will work against crystalline hulls?" "That's the million-credit question," replied Dr. Vasquez. "We've run computer simulations, but without knowing the exact composition of their hull material, we can only guess." General Carter stood and moved to the tactical display. "What about their numbers?" "Conservative estimate puts the fleet at over 10,000 ships," Admiral Morrison replied. "That's 5 times larger than the entire Korthak swarm at its peak." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Even with all their improvements in military technology, facing an enemy force of that size would be nearly impossible. "There is one advantage we have," spoke up Colonel Amy Collins, who had been quietly reviewing the data. "Their technology may be more advanced, but they won't know anything about our weapons or tactics." Admiral Veltar nodded in agreement. The Korthak were vulnerable because they had never encountered kinetic weapons. Perhaps these hegemony forces have similar blind spots. "What do we know about their own weapons?" asked War Leader Krexnor. Dr. Vasquez pulled up additional sensor data. "The ships appear to be equipped with some kind of matter disintegration technology. They can literally unmake objects at the molecular level. Our conventional shields and armor would be useless against such weapons." President Rodriguez studied the tactical display with growing concern. "How long do we have to prepare?" 4 months, assuming they maintain their current speed," Admiral Miller replied via communication link from Earth orbit. "But if they accelerate or use more advanced space-folding techniques, it could be much less. Then we need to accelerate our own preparations," President Rodriguez decided. "Admiral Morrison, I want every shipyard in the galaxy working around the clock. We need to build as many ships as possible before they arrive." "Madam President," Admiral Sullivan interjected, Even if we triple our current production, we can't match their numbers. We need to think about this differently. General Carter moved closer to the display. Alex is right. We can't win a straight fight against 10,000 ships, but we might be able to win an unconventional one. What do you have in mind? President Rodriguez asked. Asymmetric warfare, Carter replied. Instead of meeting them head-on, we use our advantages against their weaknesses, fast strikes, guerrilla tactics, and weapons they've never seen before. Admiral Morrison nodded slowly. It's risky, but it might be our only option. We'll need to completely rethink our defensive strategy. What about the new weapons research projects? Asked Dr. Vasquez. The ones using quantum manipulation technology. Colonel Collins looked up from her data tablet. The quantum torpedoes are still in early testing phases. They're designed to disrupt matter at the subatomic level, but we've only managed to build a few prototypes. How effective would they be against crystalline hulls? President Rodriguez asked. In theory, very effective, Dr. Vasquez replied. Quantum manipulation doesn't care about hull composition. It attacks the fundamental structure of matter itself. Admiral Veltar leaned back in his chair. It sounds like we're planning to fight advanced technology with even more advanced technology. Are we sure we can control these quantum weapons? The testing has been successful so far, Colonel Collins assured him. But you're right to be concerned. Quantum weapons are inherently unstable. One malfunction could destroy an entire star system. The weight of that statement hung heavy in the air. They were talking about weapons that could accidentally destroy their own worlds while trying to save them. We'll need backup plans, President Rodriguez decided. Multiple strategies running simultaneously. Admiral Morrison, I want you to coordinate conventional fleet preparations. General Carter, you'll handle the asymmetric warfare planning. Dr. Vasquez, continue developing the quantum weapons but with extreme safety protocols. What about evacuation procedures? Asked Chancellor Morden quietly. If our defenses fail, we need to be able to preserve our civilizations. It was a sobering thought. For the first time since the Korthok invasion, they were facing an enemy that might actually win. Evacuation planning will be handled by Admiral Sullivan, President Rodriguez replied. But let's be clear, evacuation is our last resort. This galaxy is our home, and we're going to fight for it. As the meeting broke up, Admiral Morrison lingered behind with President Rodriguez. Maria, he said quietly, are you sure we can win this? She looked at the tactical display showing the approaching red dots. Jake, 2 years ago we saved the galaxy from the Korthak using weapons the aliens thought were primitive. Maybe it's time to show these hegemony forces what happens when primitives get really creative. Admiral Morrison smiled grimly. In that case, I better get back to Earth and start building some very big guns. As he left the command center, President Rodriguez remained staring at the display. The approaching fleet looked unstoppable, but she had learned never to underestimate human ingenuity when their backs were against the wall. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humanity's firepower evolved beyond simple kinetic weapons into forces that could reshape reality itself. Captain Lisa Wong stood in the experimental weapons laboratory deep beneath the surface of Luna, watching the final tests of humanity's most dangerous creation. The quantum torpedo floated in its containment field, no larger than a standard missile, but capable of unmaking matter at the subatomic level. Final safety check complete, reported Dr. Marcus Stone, the lead physicist on the quantum weapons project. All containment fields are stable, and the quantum matrix is holding at optimal parameters. Lisa nodded, though she felt uneasy about the weapon. As commander of the UES Vengeance and one of humanity's most experienced combat officers, she understood the need for new weapons to fight the hegemony fleet. But quantum manipulation technology scared her in ways that nuclear weapons never had. Remind me again how this thing works, she said to Dr. Stone. The torpedo creates a localized quantum field collapse, he explained patiently. When it contacts the target, it disrupts the quantum bonds holding matter together. The target literally ceases to exist at the molecular level. And the side effects? Dr. Stone hesitated. In theory, there shouldn't be any. The quantum field is self-contained and should collapse harmlessly after the weapon detonates. In practice, we're not entirely sure. That uncertainty worried Lisa, more than she cared to admit. Humanity had always been willing to use dangerous weapons, but they had always understood those weapons completely. "Captain Wong," called Commander Sarah Johnson as she entered the laboratory. "Admiral Miller wants to see you in the main briefing room. The hegemony fleet has just done something unexpected." Lisa followed Sarah through the corridors of the underground base to the main command center, where Admiral Danny Miller was studying the latest intelligence reports from the deep space monitoring stations. "Captain," Miller said without looking up, "the hegemony fleet has split into 3 separate groups. 2 smaller forces are heading for the outer rim colonies, while the main force continues toward the galactic core." Lisa studied the tactical display showing the enemy movements. "They're trying to divide our attention. Classic invasion strategy. Hit multiple targets to spread our defenses thin." "That's what worries me," Miller replied. "This suggests they understand military tactics better than we initially thought. They're not just advanced technology, they're skilled strategists as well." Dr. Elena Vasquez entered the briefing room carrying a stack of data tablets. "Admiral, I've completed the analysis of their communication patterns. The hegemony forces are definitely using some kind of collective intelligence, but it's different from the Korthak hive mind." "How different?" Lisa asked. "The Korthak were completely dependent on their queenship for coordination. These hegemony forces seem to have multiple command nodes that can operate independently. Destroying one won't cripple the others." Admiral Miller frowned. "So we can't end this war with a single decisive strike like we did with the Korthak?" "Afraid not," Dr. Vasquez confirmed. "We're looking at a prolonged campaign against an enemy that can adapt and learn from our tactics." The implications were sobering. The galaxy had grown accustomed to quick victories through overwhelming firepower. A long war would test their resources and resolve in ways they had never experienced. "What's the status of our fleet preparations?" Miller asked. Commander Johnson activated her data display. "We've managed to complete construction on 47 new ships in the past 2 months. The shipyards are working at maximum capacity, but we're still vastly outnumbered." "And the quantum weapons?" Dr. Stone spoke up from his position near the laboratory entrance. "We've produced 12 quantum torpedoes so far. Each one has been tested extensively in controlled conditions, but we've never used them against actual targets." 12 torpedoes against 10,000 ships, Lisa said grimly. "Even if each one destroys 100 enemy vessels, we're still facing impossible odds." Admiral Miller walked to the main display showing the galaxy-wide defensive preparations. Human and alien ships were taking positions at strategic points throughout known space, ready to intercept the hegemony forces wherever they appeared. "Admiral Morrison's conventional fleet will handle the main force," he said. "General Carter is positioning his asymmetric warfare units to harass the smaller groups, but I want the vengeance and the quantum weapons held in reserve for something special." "What do you have in mind?" Lisa asked. "If these hegemony forces are as smart as they seem, they'll eventually learn to counter our conventional tactics. When that happens, we'll need weapons they've never seen before and can't prepare for." 3 days later, the first contact occurred in the outer rim. The hegemony forces had reached the mining colonies of the Kepler sector, and the initial reports were devastating. "Admiral," reported the communications officer, "we're receiving distress calls from Kepler 9. The defense fleet is... they're gone, sir." Miller felt his blood run cold. "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" "The entire fleet just vanished, sir. The colonists report that the hegemony ships fired some kind of energy beam, and our ships simply disappeared. No explosion, no debris. They just stopped existing." Lisa exchanged a worried glance with Dr. Stone. The matter disintegration weapons were even more effective than they had feared. "Time to engagement with the main force?" Miller asked. Admiral Morrison estimates 18 hours until first contact at the Vega defense line, Commander Johnson replied. The Vega system had been chosen as the primary defensive position because of its strategic location and the massive weapons platforms that had been constructed there over the past months. If the hegemony forces could break through at Vega, the core worlds would be defenseless. Captain Wong, Miller decided, take the Vengeance to Vega immediately, but stay back from the main battle. I want you ready to use the quantum weapons, if Morrison's conventional forces can't hold the line. Lisa nodded and headed for the shuttle bay. As she walked through the corridors of the lunar base, she passed laboratories where scientists were working frantically on additional quantums, weapons. The smell of fear was thick in the recycled air. The journey to Vega took 6 hours at maximum speed. When the Vengeance dropped out of faster-than-light travel, Lisa was shocked by what she saw. The hegemony fleet was even more impressive in person than the sensor readings had suggested. Hundreds of crystalline ships moved in perfect formation, their hulls refracting the light of Vega's star into brilliant rainbow patterns. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Commander Mike Torres from the sensor station, "Admiral Morrison's fleet is taking position on the far side of the system. I count over 300 human and alien ships." Through the main viewer, Lisa could see the combined galactic fleet arranging itself in defensive formation. Human dreadnoughts anchored the center, while alien cruisers and destroyers formed protective screens on the flanks. "Range to the hegemony fleet?" she asked. 2 million kilometers and closing," Torres replied. "They're maintaining their formation, but not responding to Admiral Morrison's communication attempts." Lisa settled into her command chair and activated the ship's battle systems. The quantum torpedoes were loaded in special launch tubes, their containment fields monitored by dedicated teams of physicists. "All hands, this is the captain," she announced over the ship's communication system. "We are about to witness the largest space battle in galactic history. Our orders are to observe and be ready to engage with special weapons if needed. Remember, the survival of our civilization depends on what happens here today." On the tactical display, the two fleets continued to approach each other. The hegemony ships showed no sign of slowing down or changing course. They seemed confident that nothing in this galaxy could challenge their technological superiority. "Captain," Torres called out urgently, "the hegemony ships are charging their weapons. Energy readings are off the scale." Lisa gripped her command chair as she watched the beautiful crystalline ships prepare to demonstrate why they had traveled across the void between galaxies. In a few minutes, she would discover whether human firepower was still enough to protect the galaxy, or if humanity had finally met an enemy that even their deadliest weapons could not defeat.